Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulmanitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Manupetya Apetya Kutyam Rapaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Maitaya Taravo Binedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshai Kiptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Tabe Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so we're going to continue with the beautiful Sri Bhajan Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And the last couple of days we were hearing about what we want to do and what we don't want to do. you know the anarthas, and then yesterday was a strong push about the uselessness of the four material goals of life. Right? What is the point? Right? So, and we heard from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, in that regard. We also heard prayers by Lord Brahma about attaining association with devotees and being under their guidance, and in that way attain the Lord's lotus feet. And in that mood of deeply realized bhakti, under the guidance of devotees, he said, it doesn't matter what condition of life I'm in, if I'm embodied, it doesn't matter. As long as I have pure devotional sentiments, in other words, selfless mood of love and service to your lotus feet and to your devotees, serving under their guidance and serving them also, then everything is fine. Everything is fine, right? So today we're going to start off with a verse from the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. This is Narada Muni speaking to Vedavyasa. And this is Vedavyasa. This is from that chapter when Vedavyasa is feeling dissatisfied, right? After having completed all of his literary works, but he had not written the Srimad Bhagavatam in its full form. He'd only written the original Chatra Shloki that he had received from Lord Brahma, which Lord Brahma had received from Lord Vishnu. And so he wasn't satisfied. We'll get into that more. And so this verse from Narada Muni is about no matter where you go, you can't be happy in the material world. And that's spoken in particular context, which we will get into. But this particular verse supports what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is emphasizing. Again, nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam, vaja, gadishakam. I don't want anything. I don't want wealth, don't want followers, don't want to be regarded as a greatly learned person and be attracted to worldly literature and poetry and all of this stuff. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, one should endeavor to attain pure, unalloyed devotion, Shuddha, Ahaituki Bhakti, quoting the 18th verse of the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. This is Narad. Tasyava hito prayatitako vido nalabhyate ya brahmatam uparjada talabjite dukavavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabiradam hasa. Sri Narad said, in the course of time, I have been wandering from the seven higher planets to the seven lower, such as Sutaloka. But I have not attained eternal transcendental happiness, which wise persons endeavor to taste. Just as misery comes without endeavor, by the influence of grave, quickly moving time, happiness also comes without any endeavor. What, therefore, is the use of endeavoring for worldly happiness? This is a very, appears to be a different translation than Srila Prabhupada gives, because Narad appears to be speaking in the first person. He does wander from higher planets to lower planets, and he's preaching, right? But he's also observing that nobody there is achieving real happiness. But in this translation, he's speaking from his own perspective as if he were not a self-realized soul, right? So Srila Prabhupada translates it a little differently. He says, persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmalok, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Later in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj says essentially the same thing. And his argument is, why are you endeavoring so strong for happiness? Do you think it's by your endeavor that it's coming? But think about this. Are you endeavoring for unhappiness? Right? Difficulties? No. Nevertheless, they're coming. By what agency? Your unhappiness is coming from your karma, the fruits of your works and actions in so many prior lifetimes. And so is your happiness. So you don't have to endeavor because what you are meant to enjoy is automatically going to come. So don't focus on that. Focus on bhakti. Right? So I'm going to read Srila Narayana Maharaj's commentary. I also read Srila Prabhupada's commentary, and it's interesting. They're very similar in many ways. Even the examples they're giving, which I tend to think is because they're both drawing so heavily from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? Perhaps Jiva Goswami. But they're taking from the same source and expressing it in a way that's accessible to us. So, Srila Narayana Maharaj says in this, a devotee understands that any pleasure within the material universe is insignificant compared to even the slightest experience of the nectar and fragrance of Bhagavan's lotus feet. One who has only tasted molasses will give it up when he tastes fragrant sugar candy. Similarly, before actually cultivating devotion to Bhagavan in the association of pure devotees, the living entity who is allured by the flowery words of the Vedas desires to enjoy nectar, nectarian food, and other heavenly pleasures of Swarga. Alternatively, by the influence of association with jnanis, the living entity desires liberation. Pure devotees do not accept either of these. They only desire the happiness of loving service to Bhagavan through bhakti. This text tells us that those who are genuinely wise search only for that constant, eternal, transcendental happiness that is only obtained in Haridham, Vaikuntha. The transcendental happiness is not available to the jiva who wanders throughout the 14 worlds searching for material enjoyment. Here he refers to the transcendental realm as Haridham. Remember in the Brahma Samhita, it's Devidam, Haridham, right? Um, Very interesting. That this material world, that the place under the rigid control of Durga. Durga can mean prison. She's like the warden of the prison of this material world. Um, and very frightening. And if this is all you know, you're going one place to the other, trying to find some happiness, saying it's not there. But until you have actually had association with pure devotees and with acts of devotion and performed something yourself, you can't appreciate it. It's just words. You hear about it. But the intelligent person, if they have acquired sufficient bhakti sukriti, when they hear about it, they may not have high realization, but they'll have an inborn conviction, shraddha, which has been created out of this, or uncovered, you could say, out of this association. And that's the first seed, atomic seed of ultimately what is prema, right? So hearing these descriptions over and over will fill our hearts not just with the logic and evidence externally of the beauty and reality of Vedic knowledge, but it also internally, it's beginning to act, churn the heart, purify the heart, make this real. He goes on to say that material happiness is even obtained in the body of a hog. According to his karma, the living entity sometimes tastes sorrow and difficulties, and sometimes he effortlessly tastes happiness. Therefore, the scriptures unanimously instruct that one should not endeavor to obtain that which is temporary and material. The jiva's goal is neither to prevent his material suffering nor to be successful in endeavors for happiness. Such attempts are simply childish fickleness. The wise give up searching for these temporary things and endeavor to attain service to Sri Hari, which is the soul's eternal dharma. This is so important. The jiva's goal isn't to adjust this material world, and then according to the concept of what is going to give me happiness, I strive for that. And the concept of what makes me unhappy, I try to get rid of that. And again, I say this all the time, but you can't go on Facebook without seeing devotees argue about things that they want to change in the material sense. I don't like this kind of government. I don't like capitalism. I like socialism. I don't like socialism. I like communism. I don't like the Democrats. I like the Republicans. I don't like this guy. I like that guy. I don't want to do this economic concept. I want to do that one. And they just get all caught up in that. Why? Why? What does that do with the pursuit of bhakti? If you really want to change, I was just reading about Srila Prabhupada. What is this? Was this Ambarish's recollections? Ambarish Prabhu? How he was invited by this fellow who was big in the 70s. His name was Yogi Bhajan. And he came from a Sikh background, and he had this whole yoga society. We met them. They used to come and visit us in Houston. They were dressed in all white with their Sikhi turbans and all like that. And he was trying to organize a peace conference. And thus he wanted all the different leaders of all the different yoga groups to come together. And Srila Prabhupada wasn't interested. He deflected him in the very Indian way, Okay, yes, we will think about it. I will try. But ultimately, he explained to his disciples and to Yogi Bhajan that this is not the way it's going to happen. The only way that you're going to get peace is when you make the society Krishna-centered. Because then there's nothing to fight over. Everybody's working cooperatively for the pleasure of the Lord, using the resources of this world, which are Krishna's energy, for his pleasure. And that service has to be done under the guidance of one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Then there's peace. Then there's peace. There's only argument and strife and warfare and conflict and, beatings and murder when we're on the mundane platform competing for mundane things. Even if we wave the flag of Dharma, wave the flag of religion as our motivation, it's not. It's not. Right? Krishna told Arjuna, Sarva Dharman Pradikshagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Give all that up. Who was a more righteous, well-behaved, somebody who would be the perfect leader of society than Arjuna, his elder brother Yudhishthir, Bhimasen, Nakula, Sahadev, right? But they couldn't solve the miseries of the material world. Krishna said, only when you surrender to me and come into pure bhakti with me, man mana bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mam namaskaru, mame vaishasi satam te patijani priyosi me. Then you'll be happy. Right? So, now why was this verse spoken? Why is he saying this to Vedavyasa? There's a context here. This is the 18th verse of this chapter. And so I thought it'd be important to give the context of this chapter, because this is where Vedavyasa is feeling unhappy. He's completed all the Vedic literature except the Bhagavatam in its complete form, and yet he's feeling unsatisfied. Vedavyasa, the literary incarnation of the Lord, he has no material aspiration, right? So why is he unhappy? Because he's not feeling completely fulfilled in bhakti. It's nothing material that's giving him misery. It's the incompleteness in his mission and purpose in bhakti. Right? So how did this happen? I'm going to read all these verses because this will help understand how we got. So this chapter begins where, the previous chapter left off with explaining the dissatisfaction of Vedavyasa. And then Narada Muni comes, and he sits, and he speaks to Vedavyasa. And he says, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Perhaps I should just go back to that end of that previous chapter. Let's see. Because in that's when we get the dissatisfaction of Vyasa. I did the wrong one. I did wrong chapter. 4. I did 14. I said, what's that? So that chapter 4 describes the appearance of Shukadeva Goswami, Vedavyasa following him, trying to get him back so he can recite the Bhagavatam to him. There's information about Maharaj Parikshit. Let's see. So, talking about Shukadeva Goswami. Okay. So, questions about Maharaj Parikshit. And then, let's see. Nope. So, now Vedavyasa is going to speak about his experience. Thus, the great sage Vyasadeva was very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. In other words, the conclusions of the Vedas are very high, very subtle, very nuanced, right? And so he wanted to present them in a way that people with different qualifications could understand them. Thus the Mahabharata. Mahabharata, if you think about it, isn't the Bible kind of similar in the way it approaches teaching to Mahabharata? Histories of the kings, their experiences, their own spiritual experiences, their ups and downs, and conversations between them and, learned persons of those eras, right? Stories, parables, things that people can relate to. So he compiled all kinds of literature for different kinds of persons. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. Right? And in that Mahabharata, what did he do? Aside from really amazing conversations, there are conversations by many of the Mahajanas like Bhishma and many of the sages, but there's also the gem, the Bhagavad Gita, slipped in about the narration of the great Mahabharata war, beginning with that narration, right? But after compiling Mahabharata, twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said to himself, okay, this is very good. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others can see the path of religion. Yet, he says, I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. He's fully equipped, the incarnation of God. So what is this incompleteness? I've not fulfilled my service to my spiritual master. I've not completed that, right? So he's feeling unhappy. And that's a good lesson, right? How can we ever feel satisfied at heart without knowing that we've done everything we can in the service of our Guru? I'm recalling that Srila Prabhupada did so much. And he had so many desires to do more, right? But when he was lying on his bed, preparing to depart, he spoke to some of his godbrothers, and he spoke in a very humble way, reflecting on his life. And he began to weep. And he said, I've done everything I could. I've dedicated myself wholeheartedly to the service of my spiritual master. And I've never wasted even a second. And in that sense, he had a great feeling of satisfaction. And yet, there's never a sense of complete fulfillment, because the devotee is always striving more and more, never ending, to satisfy Krishna, or in our case, satisfying Krishna by serving Srimati Radhika and her associates, or any of the associates in Vrindavan, serving all of them. The aspiration for giving pleasure to the Lord is unlimited. But Vedavyasa, he's Vishnu Tattva. In many ages, he's a Shaktivesh, right? Here he's Vishnu Tattva, and yet he, imbued with the mentality and the desire of service, which comes from Lord Baladev, he's not feeling completely satisfied. Even though he wrote all those scriptures, I'm feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Right? He pointed it out. Certainly the Puranic literature, especially the Sattvic Puranas, Padma Purana, Vishnu Purana, they speak to devotional service without a doubt. But it's mixed. They speak to other things as well. And the living entity inclined towards material pleasure, if they have a choice, this is what it says in the scripture, they're going to move towards the side of where I can get my material pleasure. Yeah, I want to serve God, but, God's put me here. And he's given me all these things. I should, enjoy them. and thank him for that. As mentioned before, Narad reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narad, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator, which is appropriate because he is the representative. He is in the direct line of Brahma, and he's his guru, right? The guru of Vedavyasa. How exalted must Narad be? So then, Sutta Goswami said, now we move into chapter 5. Thus the sage amongst the gods, Narad, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the brahmanas, Vedavyasa. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara, remember that story in the Mahabharata? Parashara Muni meeting Satyavati, being taken across the river, stopping at an island in the middle of the Jamuna, and blessing her with a child, right, by mystic yoga. The child was immediately born. Her chastity was not violated, and Vedavyasa appeared immediately, 16 years old, and of course fully realized. And he said, "Oh, mother, I'm, indebted to you. You're my mother. I have to go now to perform austerities. But if you ever need me for anything at all, just think of me and I will come immediately. I am your obedient son." And later she did. When her own sons had died prematurely, their wives were not yet impregnated and did not have progeny, so the dynasty would have died. So she called Vyasadeva, who was the half-brother of her sons, to impregnate those wives, which was appropriate at that time. Now in the Kali Yuga, you can't do that. But so he went off for that purpose. And then Parashara, when she was born, what was her name? Matsyadari. She was born. She was a great goddess, a demigoddess, one of the most beautiful apsaras and dancers. But for some reason, she'd been cursed to take birth in this world, and she was born in the body of a fish, and so she was extraordinarily beautiful. Still, that same beauty of a heavenly goddess, but she had the fragrance of a fish. But after being touched by Parashara and blessed by him, then she had an incredibly beautiful fragrance. And then later, Maharaj Shantanu became attracted to her, and then from, so many things happened, right? Then his sons came. So, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Your inquiries were full, and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahm, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu?" Narada addresses his own disciple as Prabhu. Such humility, yeah? It's just natural. I've told that story many times when I went to see Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj one time, and I went in to see him, and he addressed me as Maharaj. But when he spoke, his tone was so full of gentleness and humility. And that title, Maharaj, he gave me sannyas, right? And the night before giving sannyas, he said in a lecture, and he looked right at me and Nemi Maharaj, who was sitting right next to me. We took sannyas together the next day. We were sitting in the audience, and he said, the ceremony of sannyas, it doesn't mean that you are a sannyasi, that you become a sannyasi. It's the opportunity to become a sannyasi. You begin the process, because real sannyas means bhav. But it's some extra facility, right? So, but he called me Maharaj. And I thought, oh my God, it struck me. It softened my own heart and made him more dear to me. I wasn't thinking, yes, I am Maharaj. No, I was thinking, God, I'm nothing. Because his own humility was so powerful, that Shakti, it just, does wonderful things. So Sri Vyasadeva replies, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of Brahma, who is self-born without mundane father and mother. Okay, so he's glorifying Narada Muni's position. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you, because you worship the Creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. I love this verse now. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. And like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive supersoul. Therefore, please, find out the deficiency in me despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. He's reached the level of transcendence, and yet still some dissatisfaction. That shows the beauty of prema, how it's always increasing. And that kind of dissatisfaction in the heart, we're always feeling dissatisfaction because we always want to serve Krishna more and more. We want to serve our gurus more and more. And that dissatisfaction is a cause of great happiness, actually. I wish I had that dissatisfaction driving me forward, right? And now Sri Narad responds, and here it is. You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. So almost all the rest of that you described is worthless. It's very beautiful, very poetic, and it's very attractive to the hearts of the living entities, and many people, they're only qualified for the lesser teachings. But really, what you are instructed to give now, at this time, after Lord Krishna's departure, you are responsible and empowered to give the Bhagavatam, which is the place where Lord Krishna himself is personified and where he exists in the age of Kali, coming like the rising sun to dissipate the darkness of the age of Kali. So, those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. I'm going to read the Sanskrit, so if you ever hear it again, Na yadvachas chitrapadam hadejasho jagat pavitram praganita karhachit tadvaya samtirtamushanti manasa nayatra hangsa namayantu shikshaya. Srila Prabhupada says crows and swans are not birds of the same feather, right? Because of their different mental attitudes, right? And he's going to go into explain, the crow-like desires and aspirations of materialists versus the beautiful swans, the Paramahamsas, and their lives and aspirations. So, knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. Bhagavan. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? So we're always hearing how useless material aspirations and so-called joys are, how imperfect and unsatisfactory. But even transcendence, the different stages of transcendence, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shabdite, and without realizing Bhagavan and having awakened a mood of love and devotional service to him, even the other stages, even awareness of Bhagavan, as, in his divinity, without awakening service. Remember we heard yesterday, Sukhaishvarya Tara, right? Even you could achieve Vaikuntha, but if you haven't awakened Prem in a mature way, then even that Krishna's devotees reject, as we heard, quoted, and also Prahlad Maharaj said it, Kapila Dev said it. It's many places in the Bhagavatam. O Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness. And thus you can think of the pastimes of the Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage. You can do this. You are qualified. You are empowered. And this is what you should do. This is for the highest benefit of humanity. And in the Kali Yuga, it's their only hope. We're not favored or qualified with the capacity for meditation, the kind of discipline and vows and vrats and capacity for performing elaborate sacrifice, regulated deity worship, all the different forms of worship of the Lord from the previous eras. We don't have any of that. Kaler dosha nidhe rajam asti heko mahad guna. Well, what are we qualified? Kirtanad eva krishnasya. Mukta sangha param vijat. Right? The age of Kali is full of faults. We can't do anything but by this beautiful chanting of the glories of the Lord, real liberation, real freedom from material bondage, and entrance into the most elevated and divine realm is possible. Right? So Narada Muni says, present that for us. We, the people of the Kali Yuga. And he says, the people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy. And you have encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. And if we're not learned enough to understand all the varieties of Vedic literature and all the different kinds of recommendations, because we're exposed only to the spotless Purana and its offshoots. But in these other literatures, there are so many other recommendations. But to get an idea of what he's saying, take, for instance, Christians or Muslims or any other religion of the Kali Yuga. There are so many, basically the recommendations are for worldly piety. Worship of the Lord, but obedience to the Lord means obedience in worldly piety. And striving for success and blessings means, being happy in this world and acknowledging the supremacy of the Lord and serving Him according to basic, simplified religious stricture, like the Ten Commandments, right? Or like the guidelines of the Quran, the Old Torah, things like that. So he says, the Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated, due to material attachment, should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord, which is what the Bhagavatam is. Dharmak projita kaitavotra paramo namatsaranam satam, completely devoid of any mixed religious conceptions. Nigama kalpataro galitam palam, right? The topmost fruit of the tree of Vedic literature. All the other teachings and everything, what we're really looking for is that fruit at the very top of that tree, allegorical tree, right? That fruit which has no skin and no pit and just juice. And it's even tastier because Shuko Mukad Amrita Drava Samyutam, right? It's been touched by the lips of that great parrot, Shukadev Goswami. When worldly mangoes are pierced by the beak of a parrot, somehow they become more sweet. And when the Bhagavatam was recited by Shukadev Goswami, it became even more sweet. Vedavyasa is reciting it. He's going to write it. Then he's going to recite it to Shukadev. And then Shukadev is going to speak it to Parikshit Maharaj. Vedavyasa heard from Narad. He's empowered by Narad, right? Both Narad and Vedavyasa were there in the audience when Shukadev Goswami spoke the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. But Parikshit Maharaj was a very high level of qualification, right? And so he was able to speak in such a way, with such relish and such deep realization of the conclusions of the Bhagavatam. Vedavyasa witnessed them and recorded faithfully what he witnessed. Who spoke what happened, what did he see? But Shukadev Goswami could relish it from the position of an associate, the dear parrot of Srimati Radhika. So his understanding and taste of it was so much higher. Vedavyasa is an incarnation of the Lord. He's Vishaya Tattva. He is the enjoyer of the service of the devotees. Like Krishna felt he himself could not understand the position of the devotees, the joy that they experienced in serving him, so he came as Mahaprabhu. Only way he could taste it. Embraced and covered by the moods of Srimati Radhika. Vedavyasa could not. Right? So when he and Narad heard from Shukadev Goswami, and Narad, his Ishtadev is Sankarshan, Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. There's other forms of Narad, more confidential, but in that form, so he also could not taste the most confidential conceptions in the same way as Shukadev. And so Jiva Goswami explains in the Sandarbhas that when they heard Shukadev Goswami speaking, it was as if they were hearing the Bhagavatam for the first time. It was, oh my, their hearts were filled with this. And they became very happy and joyful, right? So, the Supreme Lord is unlimited, only a very expert personality, retired from the activities of material happiness, deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord, oh, this is a really important verse, may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. And that's the last verse before the one we just heard. Tyaktva swadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan napakvo tapatato jadi yatra kvava bhadram abuddhamushakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. Right? The devotee even may fall down in an immature stage, the Kanishta stage. Even in Madhyam, some fall down may come up time to time. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that very beautifully in his Madhurya Kadambini, right? Especially third chapter. Right? But bhakti is so powerful and independent of material sin, material ups and downs. And so if one only sins, bhakti will not be destroyed. The bank account is still there. Aparad, that will delay your bhakti. That will set you back, and there may be some stoppage for some time. But bhakti, once established in the heart, one day will bear fruit. Except, as Saraswati Prabhupada says, except under extraordinarily unfortunate circumstances. But otherwise, that's the special nature of bhakti. Whereas, and this is also described in Madhurya Kadambini, in the beginning chapters, the paths of jnana and karma, if not perfectly performed, won't yield their result. You make a mistake, you got to start over. So then, now there's the verse which Bhaktivinoda quoted. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmalok, Satyalok, right, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. And then he says, this is not quoted, but it follows the point up, and since I wanted to establish that context, and refresh us about this chapter, then he says, my dear Vyas, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruit of workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. Right? So anybody, and you know what? I had so many people that I've known over the years, from our beginning days in ISKCON under Srila Prabhupada's guidance. And the paths we've taken are so diverse. And yet, honestly, they're also so up and down. Some have gone a little bit higher, some have gone a little bit lower. Infinite variety. But I could say that anyone that I've met, almost anyone except a few that committed a lot of offense, no matter what their position, even if right now they're not able to follow and they're living outside, they look like hippies, act like hippies, this and that, in their heart, they always remember Srila Prabhupada and they always aspire for what Srila Prabhupada came to give. Right? Which is what this verse is saying. Once that's begun, And in the next life, they'll get a chance to take it up more. And others that, have come up to a certain point, may have fallen down a little bit here, there. Then we'll begin from a next point, and next and next. It doesn't go away. Because all of us have tasted something different from anything material, right? Very different. And that's the reality of bhakti. So this chapter is meant to bring us into that conviction that I don't want any more. I don't want anything mixed. I don't want wealth. I don't want followers. I don't want, to be recognized as a greatly learned person. I don't want taste for material subject matters and literature and poetry and all that, right? Bhavatad bhaktira hoitu kitvaye. I just want pure unalloyed devotion. Right? That's what we want. That's what we're trying to come to. And that's what all these verses and histories are meant to reinforce in us. So, went a little bit long. This recording has been a little awkward. My computer's going here, going there. But offering obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, to Srila Gurudev, to all of our Rupanuga Guru Varga, all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, all the Vaishnavas that ever were, ever will be. We offer our obeisance, respect, gratitude. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo.